Hello scaredy cats, it's me, Scaredy Matt. Hey, spring was challenging, and now summer's here, so it's time for a little bit of summer Phantasm with a little summer Phantasm. But Matt, how is Phantasm a summer franchise, you ask? Duh, one of the main characters is an ice cream man. Ice cream, this summer treat that nobody has any other time of year. This theme makes sense, and all of you are the ones overthinking it, not me. Phantasm is a 1979 film by Libyan-born director Don Coscarelli, the first of 5 Phantasm films that we'll be covering over the next 5 weeks. Phantasm is unlike most horror movies I've covered in the past. It deliberately makes no literal sense, but instead creates a sort of tone poem of a film. It's become somewhat of a cliche to describe a movie as dreamlike, but Phantasm operates on dream logic in a way that makes that comparison inevitable. And that's putting aside how much of an important role the dreams play in the movie. It's deliberately dreamlike, is my point. There are going to be times when, as I describe what happens in these movies, it's going to sound like total nonsense. And in a way it kind of is, like how when you describe a dream it sounds like nonsense to other people. But what's missing in any recounting of the plot of Phantasm is the way that the movie builds a mood that makes that nonsense feel natural. The bizarre story, the idiosyncratic performances, and the frankly delicious soundtrack make the movie a lot less goofy than it sounds on paper. Still goofy, but not so much that it takes you out of the story, such as it is. So we open in a cemetery, where a lady with fierce eyeshadow is having weirdly low-energy sex with a dude with a pretty gross 70s mustache. Once they're done, she pulls out a knife and stabs him because it turns out she's a man in disguise. Okay, you know what? Saying that aloud, I know how that sounds, but I don't think that this is a transphobic thing. I don't think this is like a trans panic metaphor. It's just that the film's villain, the tall man, transforms into a lady to lure people into cemeteries for sex and murder. I don't think they really thought this through much farther than let's get some tits in the beginning of the movie. It is weird to me though, that as popular as this movie is, nobody ever discusses how the tall man has sex with 2 dudes in this movie. And that's never the subject of some cheap shot joke. No character even remarks on it. I'm not saying that the tall man is good queer representation, or bad queer representation either. I just find it strange that nobody talks about this. So, happy Pride Month everybody, I guess. The guy with the stash was named Tommy, and at his funeral, we're introduced to Jody and Reggie. Looking on from a distance is Jody's younger brother Mike, who Jody told not to come to the funeral. Mike and Jody's parents died before the start of the film, leaving Jody as Mike's guardian. Jody thought Mike would be too upset by the sight of a dead body after having had nightmares after his parents' funeral. So Mike snuck out on his kick-ass dirt bike to spy on the funeral from afar, and he's the only one that sees the Undertaker lifting the casket single-handedly. And I gotta tell you, watching this for the first time since having actually been a pallbearer in a funeral, that shit hits different. Mike's got a lot on his mind. Having overheard a conversation between Jody and a very insensitive friend, he's worried his brother is going to abandon him. Mike practically worships his brother, and it's not hard to see why, because Jody is the platonic ideal of a cool older brother. He drives a kick-ass 1971 Plymouth Barracuda, owns a bunch of cool guns and shit, and he seems to spend most of his days drinking beers, playing guitar, and having sex with hot ladies who may or may not be tall men. Also, his best friend is the ice cream man, so that's a pretty solid bonus. Mike does what anyone would do when they've got troubles. He goes to see the local witch. She tells him to put his hand in a box that hurts his hand, so he can overcome fear, which is just straight up a scene from Frank Herbert's Dune. Speaking of Dune, Jody goes to his favorite bar, which is also a reference to Dune. Mike follows him looking for more evidence that Jody's going to leave. You gotta feel bad for Mike. Jody meets up with the tall man in hot lady form, and they head off to the cemetery to bone down, and you know what that means, a stabbing's a brewin'. While creepily spying on his brother having sex, Mike is accosted by a mysterious hooded figure, and runs off screaming, successfully ruining his brother's vibe. Jody sends Mike home, where he starts working on Jody's kick-ass car, where the hooded figure returns and almost squishes him, causing Mike to bonk Jody's foot with a hammer, and it makes a bonk sound effect, and it's great. That night, Mike straps a badass knife to his leg and heads out to the mortuary to get to the bottom of all this malarkey. He's chased around by a zombie man until a mysterious metal sphere impales itself into the zombie man's head, and then this happens. Side note, I've always called these things cerebral bores, but it turns out that's the name of a similar weapon from the Turok video game franchise, inspired by the spheres in this movie, and that's a really cool name, and Phantasm deserves it more than Turok. Anyway, enter Tall Man. The Tall Man is played by the late Angus Scrimm, and nobody has ever played a character harder than this. The Tall Man is such an unsettling and alien performance. Even the way he walks seems so completely inhuman, emphasized by the two small suits they had Scrimm wear to make him seem taller than the 6'4" he was in real life. He would stand on apple carts in some scenes to give the appearance of being much taller than the other characters. The Tall Man chases Mike around, but Mike manages to evade him by running behind a heavy door, which also cuts off the Tall Man's fingers. Turns out the Tall Man is full of mustard. Oh, and his fingers continue to move after having been severed. So Mike takes one home as evidence and shows Jody, who now believes him. They decide to bring the finger to the sheriff and tell him, "Yo, look at this crazy finger." And then the sheriff would say, "What? It's illegal to have crazy fingers. Let's go arrest this Tall Man." But unfortunately for them, the finger has transformed into a giant evil housefly. Ain't that just always the way? While they're wrestling with the fly and trying to force it into the garbage disposal, Reggie, the ice cream man, stops by and sees that darn fly, and now he's on board with the whole anti-Tall Man operation that Mike and Jody have brewing. Jody goes off to see what's up with this crazy Tall Man after giving some very practical gun advice to Mike.
Now remember, you don't aim a gun at a man unless you intend to shoot him. And you don't shoot a man unless you intend to kill him. No warning shots. Hey, you listening to me?
Yeah.
No warning shots. Warning shots are bullshit. You shoot to kill, or you don't shoot at all.
But then he's chased off by a shrunkened up version of Tommy, driving a hearse. Through Mike's timely intervention in the Barracuda, they run him off the road, and then stuff his corpse into Reggie's ice cream truck, which that can't be sanitary. Enough is enough! The two adults drop Mike off at the antique store that their friend Sally runs, like you do, and Mike finds a photo of the Tall Man from old times, and it turns and looks at him. He's so terribly spooked that he has to go home right now. Reggie's ice cream truck is overturned on the side of the road, and the car is attacked by dwarves, and that's the film's parlance for these hooded guys. They're not little people, they're people that have been shrunken by the Tall Man. You'll see later. Anyway, they attack. Mike runs home to tell Jody, who locks Mike in his bedroom so that he can go off solo and kill the Tall Man. Mike escapes through a convoluted scheme involving a shotgun shell and a hammer, but before he can leave, he's scooped up by the Tall Man, but then escapes. Mike heads to the mausoleum, where he meets up with Jody and a completely alive Reggie. Then they discover a room with a bunch of canisters containing the dwarves, and a portal to another planet that's extremely hot and has high gravity. You see, and this makes sense, the dwarves are dead people turned into slaves for the Tall Man on his alien planet, and they need to be all scrunched up because of how high the gravity is there, and he comes to Earth through a giant tuning fork. Just go with it. The lights go out, and then they're all separated. Reggie somehow sets off the portal, and it starts suckling up everything in the room, which he barely escapes. And he runs outside, and he finds the Tall Man in hot lady form, but she stabs him real good. Mike and Jody escape and avenge Reggie by trapping the Tall Man in a mine shaft and dropping rocks on him. Deep within the mine, they hear a noise and know it's only a matter of time before the Tall Man escapes. Mike then wakes up. It was all a dream. He goes downstairs to talk to Reggie, who explains he's just been having crazy dreams because he misses Jody, who died in a car wreck a year earlier. This left Mike under the guardianship of the local ice cream man, which is the custom in Oregon. But then, oh no, the Tall Man is in Mike's mirror and he gets scooped up by gross hands. Ah! So was it all a dream? I don't know, and it gets increasingly unclear in Phantasm 2, which picks up where this movie left off. Kind of. You'll see what I mean next week. I mean, parts of it were a dream because Jody is dead in the sequels and Reggie isn't, but parts of it weren't a dream because the Tall Man is still around doing all his Tall Man stuff. I've never understood this. I likely never will. Don Coscarelli, if you're watching this, you coward, please explain to me how much of the events of Phantasm happened in the Phantasm sequels. It's very confusing, and not in the fun way that the rest of the movie is confusing. Either way, Phantasm is a must-watch for horror fans. Angus Scrimm's Tall Man is one of the best villains in horror history, up there with guys like Freddy and Candyman. The delirious atmosphere shakes up your noodle and makes you question what exactly you're seeing and why exactly you're seeing it. the amateurish aspects of its production add to its charm without diminishing its impact. It's the perfect movie to unwind with, so grab yourself a margarita, kick up your feet, and have yourself a little summer phantasm. Thanks for watching this video on Phantasm. If you liked it, please press the like button. If you didn't like it, press the dislike button. There's 2 buttons you can press depending on how you felt about the video. Also, feel free to subscribe here, because this is where you can find my videos on YouTube. I release one every Tuesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Don't forget to wear sunscreen!